3, 2, 1. Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we've got Benjamin B.
Guess who's back?
Benjamin B is in every episode. I don't know why I do this whole I'm your host. We are your hosts of RealRecoveryTalk.com. Make sure you go there to get every single episode that we have ever recorded. Everything is on there from food addiction to sex addiction to drugs and alcohol, powerlifting addiction, you name it, it is there. You can also reach out to myself, Tom, at RealRecoveryTalk.com and Ben at RealRecoveryTalk.com. We will get back to you ASAP, but disclaimer, we do not have full-blown conversations via email. We're going to ask for your phone number, and you can have an opportunity to share your specific situation with us, whether it be about yourself or your loved one, and we'll gladly and happily try and navigate that with you. I do think, Ben, also we need to start promoting more. We have a Facebook group out there that we never talk about. I don't know why, but it's a Real Recovery Talk Facebook group. We don't really post a whole lot on there. I think we need to start doing that more. And it's just an opportunity. I'm part of Facebook groups myself, and it's an opportunity for people to just join that and just banter back and forth, and we'll make it a point to upload all the episodes to that group and just interact with one another. I think there's 30 or 40 people in that group right now. So looking to get that built up and Real Recovery Talk Facebook page, Real Recovery Talk YouTube channel. I'm on Instagram as Recovery with Purpose. Recovery with Purpose. You can find me on there. And Ben is on Instagram at...
I think it's Ben Bueno _DRWS. If you can see it on video, do reps, work steps. That's what that stands for.
Do reps, work steps. That's something that Ben and I really believe in. As you can't tell, we're quite the athletes. I mean, this camera angle doesn't really help my belly too much, but I am strong.
It's true.
Yeah. Anyways, so in this episode, what Ben and I want to discuss is something that actually Ben sent me this video. He texted it to me one evening, and it was titled California Sober, and it was pretty interesting. I guess it was Demi Lovato, who, if you are listening to this podcast, and most people know who Demi Lovato is, she obviously suffered an overdose and had some pretty severe consequences of that. In the video, she shared that she had 3 strokes and a heart attack, and she has some impaired vision now because of this overdose. But the title of this video was called California Sober, and basically it was just a video talking about how she has incorporated green stuff into her quote-unquote sobriety. And so Ben sends me this video, and I'm actually watching. I was watching UFC fights that night, and so I'm watching it, and I'm like, oh my gosh! And she was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and if you're listening to this podcast, chances are you're well aware Joe Rogan has by far the biggest podcast platform, no questions asked, millions of downloads per episode. And she's on there talking about this quote-unquote California Sober. So Ben and I thought, we would come on here and discuss our thoughts on it. Again, it's opinion. Just see what comes of it and give our thoughts and our opinion. Because reality is Joe Rogan and Demi Lovato have a very big following. And one of my first things that I said, and I texted this to Ben, was the unfortunate thing is that their following is so big, a lot of people can watch this video and take away from it that it's okay to try.
So disclaimer, I just kind of want to throw it out there that I didn't watch the entire Joe Rogan interview with her. Basically speaking, we took the 15-minute segment that was off of YouTube and just watched that, so we got some points there. And I kind of want to throw it out there too that opinions are going to run wild on this one. But basically speaking...
Can I pause you there real quick?
Yes.
You know what they say about opinions?
Oh, they say all kinds of things. I don't know if it's appropriate to say the things I
All
hear
right,
about opinions.
Go ahead.
But anyway, where I was going with that is recovery is not black and white. And at the end of the day, we're not witch burners, basically. But we did want to kind of throw our insight and more or less our experience on the topic, because we do have quite a bit of experience with witnessing some of these approaches firsthand. There's some local treatment centers that have had some outcomes that I'd like to share on at some point. And I also want to throw it out there, possibly somebody that has more credentials than we, well, he definitely has more credentials, but Dr. Drew came out and did a short segment basically going over this same thing. So I think it would be important to mention that Dr. Drew, if you don't know who he is, he's, one of the leading medical doctors, and his, from what I can tell, specialty is addiction. And, he gives his 2 cents on it, which I think if you want another opinion, point of view coming from someone that's a medical doctor as well, beyond what the credentials Tom and I have, even though Tom and I have at this point, well, we've worked with like thousands of people, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, we've worked with a lot of people. Dr. Drew basically he works with celebrities. I don't know of anybody that doesn't know who he is, but if you don't, Dr. Drew is somebody that's very popular, works with a lot of celebrities, helping them get clean and sober, has his own television show, stuff like that. So anyways, Demi Lovato goes on Joe Rogan and starts discussing this California sober, and there's so many things in this that we kind of were like, whoa, and one of the biggest takeaways that I had, and I would have, whether it be Demi Lovato or anybody, is the idea that I have to have some sort of substance in my body, not at all times, but the majority of the time. I know people that have gotten clean and sober off of their drug of choice, whether it be opiates or heroin or alcohol or whatever the case is, and have tried this quote-unquote medical marijuana aspect of it, or now called California sober. And lo and behold, I don't know of anybody that was able to stay that way and maintain sobriety, after going down that road. They've, from my perspective, 100% of the time, it has always led back to their drug of choice. And now, granted, I don't know, I know a lot of people, and we've worked with thousands of people at this point, getting them clean and sober. And that's a scary thing.
Well, I'll just throw this out there. This is based off of our experience of people that we worked with. I'm with Tom. And we've done podcasts on this before, whether it be talking about kratom or kratom, however you want to say it, kratom, but or marijuana. But basically speaking, it might not. I hate it when people talk about marijuana being a gateway drug, because it may or may not be. It doesn't really matter. In my experience, if you're trying to attain long-term recovery, I think 2 of the aspects to look at is, for instance, a guy like me, I start smoking weed, I'm literally going to smoke all day, every day, and probably not be as productive and successful in my life, things that would make life worth living. I'm not saying it would lead me back to heroin or crack, but would it truly benefit my life? Because I personally could not manage the amount of intake with pot. I can't do it. The other thing is that you got to ask yourself, if you're coming off of hard drugs, is something like marijuana, because of the quote-unquote stigma around it in recovery, is it going to take you away from all the resources, all the people, all the community, the spirit, the fellowship that got you sober to begin with? So there's a couple different ways to look at it. And one thing that they touched on briefly, too, is they went on to say that, people have gotten addicted to weed. There's people out there. They mentioned, though, that, there's no withdrawals either. But here's the thing, there are literally substances which people end up in treatment for, whether it be crack, meth. They literally don't meet criteria to get into detox because there's no quote-unquote physical withdrawal. And now I'm going to throw something a little personal touch out there for myself. I personally, like in high school, smoked so much weed that there was a point in time where I think I had to stop for like 10 days. I literally lost 10 pounds in 10 days because I could not eat. Like without having the munchies from the weed, I did have a physical response to that. My appetite was completely gone and I had a very quick weight loss. So I just kind of want to throw it out there. I know that that's probably not the norm, but a guy like me that, again, it won't necessarily lead me back to heroin, but am I going to be able to minimally smoke weed?
I love I love Joe Rogan. I love his podcast. I love the people that come on there, and I love that he challenges a lot of questions around everything. I mean, Joe Rogan has a podcast on, anybody, really. I mean, he has so many people on his podcast. And I love the fact that he can just raise questions around this. And one of the things that he said, and which Ben and I kind of were taken back in this particular clip, Joe Rogan said that people in the 12-step communities want you to feel helpless when it comes to your addiction. And how I interpreted that is, what do you mean by that, Joe Rogan? Like, what do you like? I'm an alcoholic. I'm a drug addict that's in recovery. I don't feel helpless around my addiction. I don't know what he was trying to get at. That people just need to like bow down to the fact that they're an addict and just give in to the stigma of addiction and just feel helpless around it. I'm not sure exactly what he was trying to get at, but that's not what I feel when it comes to my addiction. For somebody, and from my perspective, if I feel helpless around my addiction, that's going to drive me into my addiction even more. Really. I mean, if I feel helpless and I feel like it's something that I can't overcome, I'm probably going to continue to do it. And I think, honestly, if I look at somebody like Demi Lovato, she may be in that place where she can't fully wrap her head around the idea of not having a substance in her body. So I would think maybe she does feel helpless in her addiction, which is the primary reason as to why she feels it necessary to continue to put something in her body, because she doesn't feel like she can go otherwise. I feel totally empowered by my addiction. I feel like and it's often said, right, Ben, in the rooms, we have an unfair advantage to life. And I truly believe in my heart of hearts that my unfair advantage to life is primarily a result of my sufferings through being an alcoholic and a drug addict.
So if you listen to the podcast, you know that I'm pretty passionate about 12 steps. And, Joe Rogan, again, I'm with you. His interviewing skills are phenomenal, and he does look at things very objectively and ask very good questions. I will come out and say that as somebody that understands the 12 steps very, very well in the actual literature, and I follow that, from what the segment that I caught, Joe Rogan definitely has a misunderstanding of what 12 steps is about. And I'm just guessing, but the first step says we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. I'm imagining, I can't speak for Joe Rogan, but this is what it sounds like he is confusing powerless with helpless. Now, I'm just going to make it very simple to understand. If we were helpless, then the literature would not refer to a program of action, because people that are helpless are unable to take action. So it's literally referred to 12-step programs as a program of action. There's something to do to fix this that you have to physically get involved with, mentally, physically, spiritually get involved with to get it done. It tells us specific clear-cut directions within the 12 steps how to do that. A personal house cleaning, take an inventory, making amends, looking at your shortcomings, see how you can turn those into assets. There's literal work to be done. So the helpless thing, I'm fully not in agreement with that statement on there. And here's the other part of it too. They were discussing how, within 12-step rooms, it's very like, don't do that. You cannot smoke weed. You cannot just drink on Friday night. I will quote the big book here. It actually says in the second chapter, step over to the nearest bar room and try some controlled drinking. It also goes on to say, if you can have a drink and drink successfully, just whatever that looks like for you, our hats are off to you. Quote, our hats are off to you. Like, we're not witch burners. I said that earlier. 12-step programs are very clear to say, hey, if you believe that this is going to work for you, including a marijuana maintenance program, by all means, give it a go. Like, I'm not here to bash somebody else's approach to recovery whatsoever. But here's the thing, again, like, based off of our experience, I have so many personal stories of people that we've worked with people that have literally died have told me, like, my relapse started with weed. I got a medical marijuana card. And my best friend's wife overdosed and died. And when you ask him how that happened after 4 years of sobriety, both of them, he said it started off, we got a medical marijuana card. Within a week, we were shooting dope. Now, is that the norm? I don't know. But is it worth the risk? And I'm with Tom on that. Like, what is it that you can't wrap your head around not having something in your system all day? And one direction that they went with, and Tom and I, we had a little sidebar before this, but, Demi Lovato goes on to talk about how she meditates better on weed. And it, like, gets her outside of herself, so to speak, is what I heard. Maybe she didn't say that exactly.
She said it in context of, when I started smoking weed, it helped me learn how to meditate. She wasn't able to meditate without weed, and then she got because of weed, it taught her how to meditate, and now she can meditate without having to smoke weed.
You said something funny the other day when we were talking about this. What'd you say about...
I said, well, I genuinely, I'm not a good dancer, but, you put a 12-pack of beer in me and a few shots of Jim Beam, and I'm a good dancer.
So, in other words, one of the things that we talk about a lot is, what does that drug or substance do for you? And why is it that you can't do that without that substance? Whatever it is. I like that she touched on it. I'm not going to disagree with her. Like, a little weed probably does help some, well... In my experience, it did. But again, like, at some point I lose control. I start suffering consequences of some sort. And even if it doesn't lead me to serious consequences, I'm probably smoking so much weed all I do all day is watch reruns of Scooby-Doo and order Papa John's, and that's my life. That sucks. But what are some other things that got touched on? I want to touch on this real quick. Something that we've seen firsthand, and this is kind of where our opinions and experience come from. We're in the Palm Beach County area, South Florida, and recently 4 treatment centers that are in our area that I'm personally familiar with have gotten involved with the marijuana maintenance. Now, according to insurance companies and treatment, it's still not a best practice, quote unquote. It's not recognized as a best practice for treating addiction. Maybe in a minute we can talk about how they do marijuana and opiates together to reduce the amount of opiates people take, but I don't want to get way off on a rabbit trail. But anyway, 2 of those treatment centers in particular, ended up, because of the... I hate to put it like this, but it just is what it is. I don't know how else to word it. Because of the clientele that they were getting that weren't, quote-unquote, that serious about recovery, these 2 places ended up getting shut down by the FBI. And the owners of the treatment center got arrested. Basically speaking, like, they knew in their hearts, as professionals, in my opinion, that the marijuana maintenance approach was a way for them to get more clients, take advantage of addicts and alcoholics. They were like, and we've had that here at Rock. We've had clients that have been on a good track, and they're like, hey, 5 miles down the road, I can go to this program, and they let you smoke marijuana at their center. Actually, the doctor writes you a prescription and they provide it to you. And then, like 2 months later, we heard back from them that they're absolutely falling apart and they want to come back to our program and do this without marijuana maintenance. Sometimes they don't get that opportunity. Some of them have died. The other thing I want to touch on beyond those other two, the third one I was referencing, actually they were, rumor has it, they were beginning to be investigated, and we're having a really hard time again with the type of clientele that they were getting. That just unmotivated, didn't truly want to be sober, move forward in life, just looking for some substance to keep in their life. They ended up voluntarily shutting down within the last couple of weeks. And the last one, I think this one is the most relevant for me to share. I got a good buddy that I got sober with in 12-step rooms, and I've known him for years and years and years. And we had a discussion about this. I'm not going to name the place or anything, but he decided to try the marijuana maintenance program for his treatment center. He kept it that way for 3 weeks and threw in the towel and said, the clientele that I'm getting, I can't outrun a good treatment center. And he threw in the towel. He's like, this is terrible. There's no benefit to these clients. The other thing that he noticed right away was the clients started supplementing their marijuana intake by also buying marijuana off the streets. Hence, like I was saying in my personal experience and what I think would happen to me, they ended up giving what the doctor gave them and getting more, and just literally smoking all day. And then the actual part of treatment where you're supposed to learn life skills and get better and move forward into a life that's worth living and manageable, not unmanageable. He was straight up with me. He's like, Ben, that marijuana maintenance approach does not work. I had to give it a go.
Yeah, I mean, seeing these treatment centers and the what happens to them when they try and go down this road, and I 100% believe that the primary reason that a place would go the marijuana maintenance route is 100% financial, because most people in their heart of hearts understand that it's not the ideal path to sobriety. I don't think that there's a valid argument that can be made that abstinence-based isn't the best form of treatment. I mean, I don't, and if somebody wants to argue that or debate that or whatever, feel free. I mean, we'll have you on the show tomorrow. I can't wrap my head around it. So I think that it is 100% financial decision, which again isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, and I know people personally in my life that, and we don't need to go into detail on this, but kind of going back to what you were saying, Ben, I do know people that suffer chronic pain, that have been addicted to opiates for a very long time, that have gone the medical marijuana route, and it really has helped supplement the amount of opiates that they have to take. And somebody very, very close to me. And when I say very close to me, I'm talking like very close to me is somebody that this has been their path. And I 100% co-sign that. I think that that's phenomenal. The problem is that is not the norm. If I had somebody come to me and said, both my knees are blown out, I've got herniated discs, I've got, chronic arthritis and pain all over the place, and they can actually, you can tell when somebody's that way. If they could actually prove it and provide the evidence that is true for them, 100%. Medical marijuana, bro, do your thing. But it's not the norm. The places that Ben's referring to and the clientele that he's referring to, you're talking about a 20 to 23 to 25-year-old young male or female that is just looking for an escape. They can't do this whole abstinence-based thing. They want to go the medical marijuana route. I can't tell you how many phone calls we get from people. Their first question is, do you guys do well, either medical marijuana, or they'll say MAT, medically assisted treatment, which is all encompassing of either Suboxone, medical marijuana, benzos. Generally, it's going to be those three. And I'll say no, and then I'll say, have you ever considered abstinence? Click. They hang up. And it's really sad. It's unfortunate because they're young kids. I mean, they don't understand that they're going down a very dark path, a dark hole, and it's unfortunate. I do want to touch on something Dr. Drew said that I think makes total sense. And Dr. Drew he's Dr. Drew. He's a celebrity himself. He's on TV, but he knows what he's talking about, and he helps a lot of people. And the thing that he said in his clip in response to Demi Lovato's interview with Joe Rogan was, she just hasn't surrendered. And he said, and I will say, granted, if we got a few hundred people listen to this, watch this, it's great, but I will say that I have the same belief as Dr. Drew does, and I do feel bad for Demi Lovato because she's got herself in a position in her treatment team, which she refers to a few times in that short clip with Joe Rogan, her treatment team, say that this is okay. And she probably she believes it. And again, we're not here to throw stones. Like, it takes what it takes. And she may, if this works for her, great, phenomenal, but it's just probably not realistic.
Well, part of what she said is, if I recall, hopefully I quote this correctly, she said that they supported her behind her decision, but they'll be there for her. Like, we're here for you, or something along those lines. In other words, if this doesn't work, we're here. And I kind of want to point out, too, she's an individual that I imagine, I don't know her financial status particularly, but
it's better than ours, I can guarantee you that.
Yeah. But I would imagine she's also in a spot where she's truly able to afford extremely good help. When she says her treatment team, I didn't have a treatment team follow me a year and a half after my overdose. Like, it sounds personal, maybe like a sober coach. I know a lot of celebrities get sober coaches, stuff along those lines. And I just want to kind of throw this out there for the regular Joe, that may not have that same sort of access and support. It may be your final shot. We get a lot of those where, heck, we were having a discussion about a guy today, like, after this attempt at treatment, his family said he has no more resources afterwards. Like, this is it. If he doesn't do it right this time, and is it worth the risk? And I want to make it very clear again, like, if you're listening to this podcast, like, I'm not anti-marijuana. I know Tom's not. But, like, we're talking about for the real alcoholic junkie, and I'm not going to sit here and say that there's not people out there that I haven't met that maybe switched from heroin to pot and never came to treatment. I'm sure that they are out there. Tom kept referencing the norm, so to speak, and I want to throw that out there. A couple other things that jumped out that we had some notes on this. I wanted to touch on that they touched on during this podcast also. She said that she was taught and has been told a ton of times, if you pick up, you will die. Like, dude, I don't know who's telling her that, but, like, that's not a true statement either. People will say that to someone to try to quote-unquote scare them into sobriety. But the truth is, you may pick up. You might survive, another shot of fentanyl, whatever. Like, I just kind of want to throw it out there because they threw that out there and they talked about it for a couple minutes. It's recovery's not absolutes. And that's the thing, man. It's like, I keep saying over and over, it's not a black and white thing. Figure out what works for you. Me personally, I'm not going to judge whether you're on Suboxone, weed, whatever it is. If your life is better than it was, whatever. But what I'm hoping is that something like that doesn't turn into something worse. It's a slippery slope, like Tom said. It's there is no argument out there, Tom, that abstinence-based is not the absolute best outcome. Like, if we've had this discussion when we've talked about Suboxone and Methadone, you can't look me in the eye and tell me that anybody honestly believes, like, you got a guy that's happy and sober, abstinence-based, versus you have someone that's happy and sober, Suboxone-based. Like, they're always going to have that, like, uh-oh, what if I get sick in the back of my head? What if my insurance runs out? Or COVID comes through and the pharmacy doesn't have enough Suboxone supply? What do you do then? Like, you're dope sick. One other thing I wanted to touch on that kind of gives an idea of... I don't know how else to put it, but there seemed to be a lack of education on a certain mat drug called Vivitrol. Vivitrol is like Narcan, the stuff that reverses opiate overdoses. Basically, what it is Vivitrol is a shot that's extended life, stays in your system for about 30 days. During the podcast, Demi Lovato basically came out and said, if I do a shot of heroin or fentanyl, I'm going to be instantly sick. That is not true. She did not know what she was talking about. I'm just going to say it point blank. So there is something called precipitated withdrawals. If you are currently physically addicted to an opiate and you take Vivitrol, it will knock all the opiate molecules off the receptors and you will be instantly sick. If you have been clean and you are no longer withdrawing from an opiate, say you haven't done it in 3 months and you're on Vivitrol, if you do a shot of heroin, you're not going to get sick. What's going to happen is you're just not going to feel the heroin. So it seems like she has a reliance on Vivitrol in her head that's actually inaccurate. She's taking something she's not even... I don't know if it wasn't explained well to her or what the case is, but I've heard that from a number of people. They say that, like, oh, if I do a shot of heroin on Vivitrol, I'm going to get sick. That is not true,
Yeah, I don't think it works in the same way as, like, I think it was Antabuse, right, for alcoholics.
Yes.
If you took Antabuse and you drank, then you would get violently ill. And, I don't think it works the same way.
No, Vivitrol's not the same. And Suboxone. Suboxone has naloxone in it, which is Narcan, Vivitrol. It's just a different brand name. But, anybody that's been out there shooting heroin, shooting dope, knows if you take a Suboxone, A, you could send yourself into precipitated withdrawals because you're already addicted to heroin physically. But B, like, if you take the Suboxone and you didn't go into precipitated withdrawals, you're not going to be able to feel your next shot of heroin because the naloxone's in there. There's a bunch of memes out there about like how people take their Suboxone and then their dope dealer calls them back 2 minutes later. You're like, no, But I wanted to touch on that. We hit all the points that we were talking about. Gonna talk about.
I think so. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, we missed one.
What?
I'm not an expert on this. I just want to kind of throw this out there. I did have a brief discussion with our licensed clinician, Matt, on this topic. I asked him for some educational purposes for myself, but she compared her bulimia to substance abuse and how she viewed substance abuse has to be all or nothing as far as abstinence versus using something, where with bulimia, she kind of described how she was thinking to herself, well, now I moderate my food intake. And, I don't go throw up afterwards. The only thing I have to say about that is, like, you absolutely have to have food to live. You don't have to have a drug to live.
I think the context in which she was referring to bulimia, if I can remember correctly, was... she was more or less talking about the act or the, it wasn't the physical throwing up where she would get that high. It was afterwards, after she threw up, the effects would come and that's when she would get that high. And I can see that kind of in correlation with heroin addicts and stuff. It isn't the actual, you hear a lot, and Ben, you could probably share on this. It's the whole procedure, I guess.
Ritual.
The whole ritual behind it. Yeah, that's the perfect word for it. Going to get the drugs, finding the drugs, putting the drug, cooking the, however the hell you junkies do this stuff. I'm a drinker. But they would start to feel okay. Even before they would inject the drugs into their system, the withdrawals would start to dissipate. A lot of heroin addicts will, they get sick, they get violently ill when they're withdrawing, hence you go and get more drugs and you shoot them up. Ben was on maintenance there for a long time. You no longer get to that point where you're getting high, you're just now maintaining not to get sick. And before even injecting the drugs or ingesting the drugs or snorting the drugs or whatever, and even me as an alcoholic, I knew all day during work, I'm withdrawing. I'm a real deal drunk. I had the shakes, I wouldn't eat, yada, yada, yada. I'd get in my car, I'd shoot 90 mile an hour down the freeway, and as soon as I saw the bar, and I'm walking up to the bar and I see my drinks, and it was like clockwork. They knew I'd be there. They'd see me pull in, they'd pour my beers, they'd get my shots of whiskey. I would be fine. And I hadn't even ingested this stuff yet, but I knew it was going to be there. And the dopamine started getting released slowly before I even put the stuff in my body. And I think that's what she was referring to in talking about bulimia.
She did. She also touched on the fact of, and some people this has a greater effect than others. I did study this some in school, but the actual action of throwing up actually does release increased amounts of endorphins, serotonin, and dopamine. Some people get like a abnormal release of those neurotransmitters, those feel-good neurotransmitters after they throw up. Like me, for instance, I'm just going to share something personal. Tom knows this about me. I got like a really bad gag reflex. When I brush my teeth every morning, I'm like, ugh, ugh. And Whitney's like, what's going on in there? You throwing up? I'm just gagging.
You guys want to see it? You want to see it?
No.
He's got this thing for hair. I could pluck a hair and put it on him, and he would start throwing up.
Stop. But anyway, point is like after I gag and almost throw up, my eyes are like water and they're red. Like I feel more awake. I feel more energetic. I think it's important to point out, like, because she did touch on that, throwing up does release feel-good neurotransmitters. And I think when you become a bulimic, that feeling becomes increased and increased. Can you imagine the only high you need? Let me just go, bleh.
Yeah, but you have a lot of, like, cardiovascular risks and stuff. There's a lot of stuff that comes with that.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Increased heart attack, stroke stuff. Anyways, that I think I'm pretty. I don't have anything more to share.
I really don't either. I just want to say, in conclusion, I want to reiterate one point very, very clearly. Like, hey, man, if you want to do California sober, I hope it works for you. If it does work for you, again, my hat's off to you. Like, I'm not someone that says recovery is absolute black and white. I'm just basing all this stuff off of my experience. If you think that attempting to do marijuana maintenance is worth a try and you're willing to pay possible consequences, a possible full relapse as a result, by all means give it a shot. And in that case, I really do hope that it works for you, and I really do hope that your quality of life gets better, etc. It's not black and white. Who are we to tell somebody else how to do sobriety? We're just basing this off of sheer numbers, statistics of the people that we've worked with, the number of stories we've seen and heard firsthand. Like, hundreds of people have gone that I know thousands of people have gone out because they dabbled in marijuana and then went back to their drug of choice. What everything behind that is psychologically through their addiction, whatever the case, who knows what came first, the chicken or the egg? But at the end of the day, ask yourself, is it worth it? Am I making an educated decision? I kind of look at that as a big part of our podcast is, we, for lack of a better way to say it, we generally don't try to tell people exactly what to do, but how to make very good educated decisions on what they're going to do and how to approach situations whether it's with yourself or with your loved one, whatever the case may be. You want to make a healthy, well-educated approach and take good action. That's it.
All right. Well, that is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for tuning in. Again, go to realrecoverytalk.com. There you will find every single one of our episodes. Make sure to go to the Facebook group, Real Recovery Talk Facebook group. I know how many people listen to this podcast roughly, and you could really increase our Facebook group substantially if you all go there and join. Yeah, that is it. We will see you next Thursday. Later.